Joe Patrick. How you doing, bud?
Not too bad at all, buddy. So, what have you for me today? Oh, it's Keir Starmer, is it?
It is, in fact, Keir Starmer. People are talking about how he's doomed. We watched that other fellow the other day talking about backbenchers, talking smack. So we're gonna see what's going down with old two-tier Keir here.
Oh no, what did he screw up this time?
It might just be basic malfeasance or basic malfunction. I don't know. But we'll find out. That's why we got the video.
Okay.
Here we go.
Exactly.
Less than 2 years ago, Keir Starmer walked into Downing Street with a 174-seat majority, one of the largest in modern British history. On paper, he had more political capital than any Labour leader in decades, and that is just where the capital stayed. On paper. Before the year was over, he was already sinking in the polls, and by the start of 2026, there were serious whispers inside Westminster about whether he'd even survive to face the next election. And then came the Peter Mandelson scandal, involving his former ambassador to the US, who was revealed to have been deeply connected to Jeffrey Epstein.
All right, so tell me about that. What's going on with that?
Well, he was very, very good friends with Epstein. So much so that he was passing on information to Epstein in a lot of ways. And
I'm guessing like state secrets or things he just shouldn't have been releasing.
His only material. I wouldn't say nuclear launch codes level of treason, but a lot of stuff that's discussed behind closed doors.
And what is his relationship with Keir Starmer?
So Keir Starmer, he was Keir Starmer's pick. And the whole lot, he was, Keir Starmer's man, great guy. Keir Starmer really talked him up. And then the files came out.
But what was his position in this cabinet or the previous Labour cabinet?
Well, he was always in and about the Labour Party. He was always high up within Labour governments. He was always in the halls of power, you could say.
Okay.
And really, really clever man in a lot of ways. He knew how to work the room, as they would say. But when the Epstein files came out, it was really, really bad for Starmer. It's one of many mistakes Starmer's made. This is one of many mistakes this gentleman has made over the last.
So he was connected to a man whose political acumen became zero, right? Or his political capital was zero. Okay. But did he have a position in Keir Starmer's Labour government, or was he just a member of the Labour Party?
Oh no, he was being nominated for a higher post, and the whole 9 yards. He was picked for a higher post. There was a whole thing. There was a whole press conference and how great he was, and as I said, in the middle of all this, the files came out about Epstein and the connection there, and that was the end of that.
Yeah,
but the problem is
zero. Yep.
This is one of many mistakes Starmer has made while he's been prime minister. But he seems to survive all of them. I don't know if he's going to survive this one, though. I'm not too sure. He probably will. He's a bit clever there about surviving, but this is one of many, many, many blunders that Starmer has made. One of many,
he's
many.
An attorney. He's not stupid. He's pretty slick. So
he's pretty slick, right? But I think this time it might be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Maybe.
Yeah. Double talking slick lawyer. All right, let's see what Mr. Whistler, old Simon here, has to say about it.
In the latest release of 3.5 million pages of documents, which really just begs the question, how did a prime minister with this kind of majority end up fighting for his political life before his second year was over? And perhaps more importantly, can Keir Starmer's premiership even survive?
So,
the paper tiger.
The paper tiger, right. So, wasn't Keir Starmer the one that said that they have free speech in the UK, but they keep locking people up for retweeting things and saying stuff on the internet?
Yeah. We have all seen the headlines where the comedian from Ireland was escorted off a plane by armed police officers and questioned over a tweet he made.
Right.
And so on.
3 of them right out of Heathrow. They picked him up, right?
Yeah. And in fact, no, I will say the police have released their conversation with the gentleman. They were very respectful, but obviously the gentleman had a very, rightly so, negative reaction of 3 armed officers escorting into a private room to have a chat with you. Over a tweet.
For mean words.
It's absolutely ridiculous. As I said to you, these laws over there are absolutely ridiculous. They make no sense. There's bad law.
Right. And Konstantin Kisin from Trigonometry keeps bringing it up. You are arresting and jailing 3,000 people in a year, and you are arresting 12 to 15,000 a year for saying things that are mean. Like, that's like, if you can't talk about something, you can't actually have a real conversation.
I will correct Trigonometry there, because I looked into that figure myself.
Mm-hmm.
Half of them were spent time in jail and so on. A lot of them were sanctioned, fined. As you say, the process is the punishment in a lot of cases with those 15,000. It's absolutely ridiculous. As I said to you that time, as I've said to you off mic, as they would say, this is a very badly written law. It's a stupid law that should never be put in place. It wastes police time, it wastes courts time. It should never have been put in place in the UK. And they should have known better.
They're releasing violent criminals to put them in jail. Like this, it's asinine, right? And then those people will self-edit and not say anything, and then the people's voice is lost because they don't want to go through the process, which again, like you and I have said in the past, is the punishment. Like that just...
Yes.
All right, let's let Whistler cook. See what we got here.
The fact that Keir Starmer and his Labour Party more generally is in trouble isn't exactly breaking news. He's long been underwater in approval ratings. Last November, Opinion found that 55% of voters wanted the Prime Minister to resign, with some surveys suggesting he was even less popular than Liz Truss.
Okay. Tell the people who Liz Truss is.
Yes, she's a former Prime Minister. She was very, very bad, actually. She was... The sad thing about Britain at the moment, they've gone through over, I would argue, about half dozen very bad prime ministers in the last number of years, and Keir Starmer's one of many at the moment. They just don't seem to find a good, decent leader among them at the moment.
Well, they failed to meet the constituency's requests. We want less of this and more of that, and they get more of this and less of that. But exact opposite. Yeah. Right, the people say, "Hey, we want this," and then they get the opposite of it in spades. Right? We want less immigration. That is bad, and they're like, "No, you're going to take more," and the public purse is going to get hit, which means taxpayers are going to have to pay more money. Like they can't seem to get it right. You're an island. Stop letting them go there.
But I think the underlying problem with the UK at the moment is our economic forecasts. It's absolutely dismal at the moment.
It is pretty dismal.
The only way they'll dig themselves out of that is increase their trade either with the EU, with other powers out there. There's China, India, so on. US, I know they've done a fantastic trade deal there. Well, the paper's still been up in the air there. The EU, they are still trying to hammer out some sort of agreement there. The problem is, overall, is they opened the borders. Well, I wouldn't say they opened them on purpose. I think they just kind of stumbled into it. It's the best word I could describe it. It wasn't like they did it on purpose. I think they just kind of stumbled into it.
Really?
Best word to describe it.
So the birth rate there is what, 1.7? So they're going to have to refurbish that somehow. And the way you do that is with immigration. That's how you get bodies there. But
yes, you'll have to have
bodies that are, and we went over that with that Crowder episode where he's like, look, they're costing you, some of them, $1 million a pop for both them and their children. They're not working. Yes, they're just stealing from the state. They're extracting resources.
What they have to also understand is you need a certain amount of immigration. We all understand. You have to have a certain amount into your country every year to repopulate your country. But as you were saying, there's no point of bringing in people who are going to be a net negative to your country. We're going to sit there and extract resources from the population.
Right, and not assimilate on top of that.
No, back in the heyday of Britain, where they had massive steel factories, shipyards, and so on, unskilled workers could get a job pretty easily. But those days are gone. The modern Western world doesn't need unskilled workers. And that's what's happening. They're getting a lot of unskilled workers, but there's not enough jobs there in any Western country anymore. Most of the manufacturing is either gone to China, India, other countries.
Right. Here it's Mexico. So yeah, we get it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's let this guy cook.
Before this scandal, there were already serious conversations going on inside Westminster about whether he'd survive to face the next election. This is all made all the more extraordinary by what happens in the last general election back in 2024. Labour won 411 out of 650 seats, giving Starmer a whopping 174-seat majority.
Oh, there's your boys, Sinn Féin. They got 7 seats.
Yeah, Northern Ireland.
Green Party got 4 seats. Look at that.
Yep, that's because you have to remember the United Kingdom is made up of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So that's why you see all these different parties. But you have to admire they got a fantastic majority, Labour, last time around. They were promising economic change, make Britain, as you would say, make Britain great again, and really pull them out of this economic mire that they're in. But they cannot seem to do it. Because they tried going over the Atlantic, as Starmer himself went over to Trump a few times, trying to sort out a trade deal, get the less tariffs and so on. It was a bit of a handshake deal, but it's still not cemented there. Then Starmer tried to go over to India, try to hammer out a trade deal there. That kind of worked in some ways. Then they went to the EU, asking, can we start, be buddies again?
Yeah, they told him to eat his hat. Yeah, but
they said in a very polite way, yes.
yeah.
She was very nice about it, and she said, "Yeah, we'll consider all options on the table."
Ms.
Which is basically
was not pleased with the UK coming over with hat in hand, and she said,
"Hat in hand." No, she was very nice about it. She said, "Look, we'll consider all options on the table." So it's basically.
See how the future's looking next year. Yeah, get out of here.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, but don't call us. We'll call you. My guy will ring your guy. We'll get back to you sometime.
We'll have lunch or something. Never.
But the problem is what people don't understand is with Brexit that time where they were leaving the EU. The UK made the mistake of of stepping on a lot of toes on the way out. Yeah. It's probably the best way to describe it.
Not good. All right, here we go.
Majority bigger than Thatcher's biggest win in 1983, Johnson's in 2019, and just a few seats short of topping Blair's 179-seat majority in 1997. But those numbers are where the good news stopped for the party. Despite the landslide, Labour barely outperformed their 2019 numbers. In election, they lost badly and underperformed their 2017 high watermark of 40% of the popular vote by over 6 points. The reason this week's showing yielded such a wildly different makeup in Parliament wasn't because of any large-scale move by the country in Labour's direction, but because of a fracturing of the right-wing vote between Rishi Sunak's Tories and Nigel Farage's Reform. And in the UK's first-past-the-post system, often all you need for a thumping majority is for your opponent's vote to split. In other words, the 2024 landslide had very little to do with the party itself, and while Starmer entered Downing Street with some goodwill, he quickly blew it. The first and arguably most damaging blow was self-inflicted. Labour's manifesto explicitly promised not to raise taxes on working-class people.
They said what?
They promised, yes. Now, bear in mind, that was one of Labour's promises of, we're not going to raise taxes on the working class. Just bear that in mind. Because mainly who normally vote, traditionally who vote for Labour are the working class. So they promised them, we're not going to raise taxes any more than what they are. It's all going to be sunshine and roses. Until they went to the Chancellor of the Exchequer and sat down with the books, and they realised, wait a minute, we actually need money. We need lots of money.
You need lots of money.
As you know. Yes, because we're running a deficit.
Oh, hold on. Is that like Ms. Wilson in Seattle or Mamdani in New York realized that they're out of money and actually owe a lot of money? And all the things they promised aren't going to come true?
As I said, there's only 2 ways you can raise money for your country or your state or your city. Either you get investment in there quickly, stop building factories, generating jobs, which generates more people, more higher income, a bigger tax base, or you raise taxes. There's only 2 options.
Whoa, what about the old bake sale? Couldn't they sell cookies?
Well, I think what most people don't understand about economics is very simple. You need to raise taxes if you owe a lot of money, or you need a lot of investment in order to pay down your debts. There's only two ways out of this. Raising taxes is never popular across the board. No one likes taxes being raised.
It's theft, functionally, yeah.
But what people don't understand is you need money to run your country, no matter what it is.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Pledged that Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, had repeated herself on multiple occasions. So, when the first budget landed in October 2024 and contained the largest package of tax increases in a single proposal since 1993, the backlash was intense, to say the least. Labour tried to frame it all as fiscal responsibility, as a necessary response to the mess that the Conservatives had left them with. Vote.
So I blame the other guy, so I'm going to raise your taxes. Is that what that is?
But I will say one thing, and I know I can't believe I'm saying, in Labour's defence, they kind of threw up a small bit there. They were left with a massive deficit in their budget. Same as Mandami said in New York.
But
He opened up the books and he was left
billion in New York.
Debt. Before he was even sworn in, that's how much New York owed. Yeah. Same in the UK. So now the problem is probably Mandami will have to raise taxes in New York or get investment, or say what Labour did here was they raised taxes across the board for everybody. Everybody got to kick up the backside, as I said.
Got a piece of the action. Everybody got a piece of that, huh? Nice.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Ooh, dog. Okay. That sucks. Here we go.
Voters didn't buy it. The tax rises were also accompanied by incredibly divisive cuts to welfare, including the axing of the winter fuel allowance for most pensioners, a universal benefit introduced by Gordon Brown. Suffice to say, taking money from people tends to be pretty unpopular. By summer last year, the picture was only getting worse. The welfare reform package that was supposed to demonstrate Labour's willingness to make tough choices fell apart when backbenchers revolted and Reeves was forced into a humiliating U-turn. To add insult to injury, when Starmer was asked directly in the Commons at Prime Minister's questions whether she'd still be Chancellor at the next election, he declined to say yes, with Reeves visibly in tears.
It was his policy. She got it forced on her, so she had to say, "This is what the Labour Party's going to do," and he just slapped her in the face. Oh,
yeah, and in fairness to that lady, she got absolutely roasted alive over it, and rightly so. And rightly so, because one of their key promises was no tax rises. Right, and the first budget they had, everyone got a tax rise across the board.
The Secretary of the Exchequer isn't an independent agent. That individual has to put forth the plan that the government has decided is the plan. Right?
Yes, but unfortunately, the normal man in the street doesn't see it that way.
Yeah, so she should have stepped down. Like, if you say that I have to do this thing that you are lying about, that's bad on me. She should have walked, bro.
Well, I think, unfortunately, collectively, Labour realised that they had to raise taxes. I know people are not going to agree with me that, because they owed so much. You have to remember, Britain has been running at a deficit ever since Brexit.
Right, but France has been running at a deficit for 40 or 50 years.
Yes, but you have to remember, France is in a different position. It has the European Central Bank to back it. Has other mechanisms, it has other countries to back it. There's 27 other countries there.
It's 27 other countries. No, but the problem in France is they have those, what's that called? The pension. Their pensions are insane. Right? And pretty soon, with an inverted age size, like their older people is going to be a much larger section. They're not going to have enough working people. It's going to happen in the United States pretty soon here too, because our replacement birth rate's so low. Right?
But that's why I think, unfortunately, with Labour, I can't believe I'm saying this about them. They were stuck between a rock and a hard place over the Conservative government from the previous administration.
Right.
They were stuck with a massive deficit. Now, what they could have done, which would have been the smarter thing to do, was cut back in internal spending, which was a recommendation at the time.
Right.
I
Well, a
remember
lot of
reading
that
that.
has to
one.
do with NGOs with their hands out that they're not even checking to make sure that
No,
they're
they're talking
legit
about
entities.
what they were talking about was coming back onto civil service, not the doctors and nurses or police officers. I'm talking about the back end civil service. They're talking about maybe coming back into armed forces and so on, and save money that way.
Right, but the
And
armed
reinvest
forces
it.
have been just decimated. It's real bad. It's horrible. Like their navy and their
Nope.
army is just a scansion of what it
But
used to be.
It is, but unfortunately, Britain can't afford anything larger at the moment. They just can't. They're already stretched very, very thin. And tariffs as well hit them very hard as well from the United States, because one of their largest trading partners is the United States. So they had a combination of all this happening at the same time. So unfortunately,
So
they had to find money from somewhere.
the UK, nobody's doing them any favors, and they're not doing themselves any favors. Got it. All right.
Yeah, pretty much.
Just behind him. And then there was immigration. This one is genuinely rather strange, because by any objective measure, Starmer's government has been way more pro-enforcement than that of his Conservative predecessor. The government published a white paper in May 2025 called Restoring Control Over the Immigration System that introduced some of the most restrictive changes to the UK's visa regime in years, tightened English language requirements across the board, and pushed to cancel automatic settlement rights after being in the country for 5 years. And overall it worked. Net migration dropped to around 204,000 by mid-2025, down nearly
204,000 is still a massive, massive amount of
Yes.
people, even though there's 60 million people in the UK.
Which, no, bear in mind, this is a massive drop. And we'll have to give them credit where credit is due. This is a massive drop. This is down over 70% where it was
But like
at the
the
peak.
Gardaí, like in Ireland, under the old tricolour, they're trying to push them out too, and I think they're doing better as well.
Yep.
But just based on this, and then you end up in London with a lot of splinter cultures that don't assimilate and all those kinds of things, right?
Well, London's always been traditionally a melting pot, but outside of London, this is in fairness to Starmer, he has tried to crack down on immigration. I understand why he's doing it, because he's thinking forward to the next election.
Right.
And now, will he overcome the Conservatives, UKIP, and all the other parties? I don't think Labour will. I think Labour is going to get absolutely decimated in the next election.
What about
That's what I would say, no matter what.
Right, but what about the Reform Party? Do you think that's going to be?
UKIP and Reform and all the rest of them. I think they'll all come together in one kind of coalition. That's the way it looks like. But they do align in a lot of ways. Now, Nigel Farage will pick up a good couple of dozen seats. His party definitely will. Just judging by the latest polls over there.
All right.
The rest of I say they'll end up with a coalition government of a sort. A very uneasy coalition, but they will have a coalition.
And you think they're going to outpace Labour with it, though? Or is Labour going to be the top dog and have to pick someone else to work with them, and that's just going to cause a...
I think Labour will lose at least 75% of their seats easily.
Ouch.
Now, where the rest of them where those seats would land is going to be the interesting way. Because with so many dogs in the race now, it'll be very, very interesting. Like you still have a couple of other smaller parties, but I think Nigel Farage and the Conservatives and a couple of other right-wing parties will come together in a coalition in the next. I could nearly put money on it. They'll come together.
Not quite put money on it, but you think, okay.
Oh well, I probably would put a little bet inside the bookies.
All right.
Put that
Well, there you go.
70% from the record-breaking peaks under Sunak. Yet none of it mattered. Starmer shifted Labour further towards immigration restrictionism than any leader in the party's modern history, yet to little avail. While we wouldn't want to psychoanalyze the British public, trust me, we're mostly just thinking about football and bake-off, it does seem that Starmer simply doesn't have an anti-immigration vibe, so people don't trust him on it. How else do you explain the fact that a Reform Party that is now full of the same ex-Tory MPs, like Cilla Braverman, who oversaw the biggest immigration wave in UK history, is somehow considered more trustworthy on the subject? Not only did Starmer's immigration line earn no friends on the right, it alienated supporters on the left. For them, watching their party move in a restrictionist direction feels more like they voted left and got Farage as PM, and many have openly lamented what they describe as Starmer's divisive language on the matter.
Yeah, because he's a slick-talking lawyer. He used to be a good
Yeah,
lawyer. Now he's a bad prime minister.
But what he said there was an awful lot of the people saying Nigel Farage's party and on them, they oversaw the massive immigration influx into the UK. But now, because the tide has turned, they've flip-flopped, and now they're pure anti-immigration.
Well, your boy Connor Tomlinson talks about that a lot. So
yeah, as you said, politicians are all flip-flopping like that.
Like cheap suits, man. All right, here we go.
The cumulative effect of all of this was to sink Labour down the polls like a Titanic made of shredded dreams and disappointment. The 7-poll moving average had Reform UK at 29, Labour at roughly 20, and the Conservatives at 19. Averaged out, this led to an average projection that Labour would collapse from 411 seats to just 85.
That's
With
insane.
an election today, with Reform winning an outright.
Well, even the Liberal Democrats and the S&P would be equal to or above the Conservatives in that.
Yeah, the Liberal Democrats have always been there. In fair, they've always been there. They're kind of, I would say, the centre of the road party. It's the best way to describe them for the most part.
Okay.
Yeah, they're okay. They've never been too outspoken about any real issue as such. It's probably the best way to describe them. I've seen over the years.
It looks like Reform UK is going to come out on top with a significant. Work with the Conservatives, I guess.
I would say the Conservatives. That's what I was saying. The Conservatives and Reform would definitely probably come together in a very interesting alliance. It'd be very interesting government when those two get together, because that's the only way they could do it, really.
Right.
And the Tories, be the Tories, they'll grab at any excuse to be in power, no matter who it is.
Which one of the Tories?
You're talking about the Conservatives there. Sorry.
Okay. Well, sometimes people don't know. Conservative equals Tory. Good. Here we go.
The party that had stood on the steps of Downing Street less than 2 years earlier with the biggest majority in a generation was now polling behind a party that had existed in its current form for less than a decade, and the scandal that would come to define Starmer's premiership hadn't even hit yet. What he knew. Okay, so it's pretty clear that Starmer wasn't exactly on the strongest footing going into 2026. What broke in the last week or so has made things go from bad to worse. Back in 2024, Starmer appointed Peter Mandelson, or one of the architects of Blair's New Labour and a controversial person in his party, to be Britain's ambassador to the United States.
That's why I didn't want to spoil this earlier on.
There's a very close relationship between London and Washington. At the time, this logic made a certain kind of sense. Mandelson had served as the EU's trade commissioner, had deep connections in Washington, and was widely regarded as a highly effective political operator. Given the omnipresent threat of Trump's wild on-again, off-again tariffs hanging over everything, Starmer wanted someone who could navigate the personality-driven channels that are Trump's White House.
Do you remember?
Possible.
Do you remember earlier? You were asking earlier. So I didn't want to spoil anything at the start of the video. So that's why I was saying he was Starmer's guy. He was the guy who was going to go over, sort everything out with Trump.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know they were on the island together. You know, they probably have a bit of history. You know, he was the guy. Unfortunately, Starmer didn't know they were on the island together at this stage, but you know,
right.
Yeah. But he had a very close relationship with Starmer. Starmer said, "Oh, he can go over there now and fix all the tariffs, everything else," and yeah,
go over there and do all the things. But instead, it's a black eye for two-tiered Keir. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Then, in September last year, email surfaced showing that Mandelson had maintained a close friendship with Jeffrey Epstein well after his 2008 conviction for soliciting a minor for prostitution, something that the Financial Times and the Daily Mail both reported on previously, but it wasn't paid much mind until the broader Epstein controversy was thrust back into the news. Starmer sacked him immediately. Problem solved, right? Well,
now, bear in mind now, that wasn't a public record that he tried picking up a minor.
Mm-hmm.
So a quick Google search of his name would have brought that up.
Oh, Keir Starmer doesn't have access to Google. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, all jokes aside, he should at least have done his proper background check, even himself or his aide or so on, before he even suggested this guy. That would have popped up.
Sure.
And the fact that no offense, but the whole world knew that Epstein files are going to be released. And by the way, it wasn't a hidden secret that this guy was friends with Epstein and he was on the island. Everyone knew it. It was an open secret, as your man said there, was reported back in 2019, 2020, and recently up to last year.
Right.
So this was a known goal that he could have prevented quite easily.
For sure. All right, let's see what else you got to say about it.
On January the 30th of this year, the US Department of Justice released over 3.5 million pages of Epstein-related documents, and the bottom really fell out on this whole thing. What those files revealed wasn't some embarrassing friendship that had gone on too long. What they showed was a sitting cabinet minister systematically feeding confidential government information to a convicted sex offender, and doing so with a horrifyingly regular frequency. Mandelson was revealed to have advised JP Morgan's Jamie Dimon to mildly threaten the Chancellor of the Exchequer over a proposed bank bonus tax, using Epstein as a back channel between Wall Street and Whitehall. But it got worse from there. Mandelson in 2020 wrote to Epstein, remember, who worked as a financier, a man whose entire career was built on trading, telling him that sources were saying a €500 billion bailout was almost complete. The very next day, European governments announced the rescue package, and the euro posted its biggest rally in years. And when you pair those emails with the $75,000 in payments that financial records show flowed from Epstein-linked accounts to Mandelson, the picture starts to look a lot like something a court might eventually have to weigh in on, doesn't it? Metropolitan Police announced a criminal investigation into Mandelson for misconduct in public office and searched his properties, by which point he had resigned from both the House of Lords and the Labour Party in general. This was mostly seen as too little too late, though, because the question that immediately took over British politics wasn't what Mandelson had done, it was what Starmer had known and why he'd gone ahead with the appointment anyway. And the answer to that first question, as it turned out, was quite a lot. Before the appointment was even announced back in December 2024, Starmer had read a 2-page Cabinet Office vetting note that explicitly flagged the Epstein relationship as a risk, including the fact that it had continued after the conviction, that there was a picture of them together, and that evidence suggested...
Wow, they're pretty interesting pictures.
Oof, tomato. Look at that. That's all bad.
But I think he's right. Sooner or later, this guy is definitely going to go in front of a judge in the UK.
Well,
that's without a shadow of a doubt, because there's definitely a criminal case there to be answered.
Part of the problem is he's a peer as well, so that's going to make it awkward. So
it's not going to make it awkward. In fairness to the Metropolitan Police and other forces over in the UK, they are pretty good at prosecuting guys like this. And in fairness, the evidence is pretty damning. It's all literally in black and white. There is no denying it or fluffing it.
This one seems to be in color, Patrick. This one's not black and white. This
yes, yeah. I was just saying, yeah, definitely color images. Yeah,
right, here we
go. Epstein's Manhattan apartment while Epstein was serving his prison sentence. Starmer asked Mandelson 3 direct questions about all of this: why the contact continued, why he had stayed at the property, and whether he had connections to a charity linked to Ghislaine Maxwell, who was Epstein's partner in crime. According to Downing Street, Mandelson repeatedly lied in his responses, though he disputes this and insists his answers were genuine. Downing Street sources described him as having been economical with the truth. And on the property question specifically, Mandelson told Number 10 that he had not stayed at the apartment, despite the fact that the vetting note Starmer had already read flagged evidence suggesting completely the opposite. And Mandelson's answer wasn't the only warning sign that was ignored. The Foreign Secretary David Lammy reportedly held concerns about the appointment for related reasons, and security services allegedly shared their own reservations with Starmer as well. None of it mattered though. The team largely decided the matter settled and moved on.
Yeah.
That decision is what ultimately transformed this from an inquiry about Mandelson's relationships into an existential crisis for the PM. Once the bars dropped and the scale of what Mandelson had been doing became public knowledge, all eyes were squarely on Number 10, and more specifically on the question of why Starmer had appointed someone whose red flags were clearly known well before the appointment had come through.
So then that leads to conjecture, right? So what did he know? When did he know it? And why didn't he act on it sooner if he had the knowledge?
Well, he had the knowledge. His own intelligence services would tell him this is a bad idea. His own deputy was telling him it was a bad idea. Everyone's telling him this was a bad idea because apparently they all had access to this thing called Google, which is
right, the Googles. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I've heard of it.
everyone knew this train was coming down the tracks. Everyone knew the Epstein files were going to be released. Everyone knew that he was friends with Epstein. Everyone knew he traveled there, especially the British intelligence service knew he traveled there. Everyone was saying to the Prime Minister, do not appoint this guy. Everyone was telling him this.
From MI5 to the MAID, right? Like everybody.
Yeah, everybody, even the tea lady at one stage probably was waving the flag at this stage.
Mother, should
But
I?
no.
No.
No. Yeah, and he still went ahead with it for whatever reason. Because,
Strange.
yes, crazy, absolutely crazy.
All right, here we go.
Quoting, "None of us knew the depths, the darkness of that relationship," Starmer told the public, apologizing to Epstein's victims. And on one level, that's true. Nobody definitively knew about the forwarded government documents or the bailout tip-offs until January. Even so, the public anger isn't linked so much to Mandelson's alleged corruption, but the sense that Britain is governed by an incompetent boob surrounded by a self-serving elite, one which will keep handing jobs and perks to its members, even when they've been advising the most notorious sex offender in modern history. And that sort of anger is going to be almost impossible to dispel.
So, numpties, right? Just a bunch of numpties up in there doing the thing.
That's what the British public see at the moment. Like, Starmer hasn't been popular for last couple of months, especially, and this is just the icing on the cake. It's the fact that even everybody knew exactly what was going to happen when he appointed this guy.
When your intelligence service tells you don't do it, you should probably not do it.
Especially to a very important post like this. Being a British ambassador to the United States is probably a really high post, especially for the UK at this time.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Especially for the UK at this time when it's trying to negotiate tariffs, trying to get a better deal out of the United States, so on. It's really crucial post for them at this particular time period.
Right.
And the fact that he
bona fides are guaranteed to not whatever, and he knew, or he had to have known something was up with that.
Everyone knew what he was like. Apparently the whole, like, as your man said there, look, it was a report back in 2018, 2019, so on, about him picking up not Epstein, but in particular, but picking up an underage lady of the night. The best way to describe it.
Right.
It's everyone knew exactly what this guy was about.
Apparently, he needed an escort in the worst possible way. So
yes, but what I'm saying at the end of the day is, Starmer. This is one of many mistakes Starmer's been making over the last especially the last 12 months, I would say. First, bringing in these ridiculous laws that don't make sense in any law book whatsoever. Like, it's just absolutely ridiculous what he's doing. And the British public are right. He is an absolute numpty.
Right. It's not good. All right, here we go.
Quote, "I have won every fight I've ever been in. I'm not prepared to walk away from my mandate." That was the PM, addressing the Parliamentary Labour Party on February the 9th. And you've got to give it to Starmer. He's not backing down without a fight. After it was all over, the cabinet fell in line with potential challengers like Rayner, Streeting, Miliband and Burnham, all posting statements of support. Now, whatever you may think of Starmer, he's more or less right about the whatever he fight thing. He had a hell of an uphill battle just to get to be party leader, and that was something of a cakewalk compared to what came after. He completely overhauled the party from the inside out. He implemented the controversial recommendation of the Equality and Human Rights Commission's damning report on Labour anti-Semitism, systematically dismantled the party's organisational infrastructure, and ousted former leader Jeremy Corbyn from the party.
Yeah, he's a good organizer. He's a really good lawyer. But there's something that's happening with this guy where he's just not getting it. Like he's missing on some cylinders, and you can't do that when you're in charge of one of the biggest entities politically in the world. Like, you can't do that. I mean, they're less and less relevant, especially since Brexit. But this is bad, right?
Like, he's a really good politician, and you cannot argue that he's a fantastic work in politics. But as a leader, he's making one mistake after another. Yep. And it's absolutely, like, I just feel sorry for the normal British. I've always said, I always feel sorry for the normal British guy trying to make a few bob and live his family.
Mm-hmm.
Now, under Labour, I know why they voted in Labour, because they promised all this stuff. But the fact that Labour turn around, like, inflation is up across the board, all across the UK.
Well, it was like an immediate failure. We're not going to do this, and then they immediately do it. You can be as good at politicking as you want, but if you lie to the people, like, and that's what it looks like. It looks like he lied. Not that politicians ever lie, but yeah,
yes,
it just looks like, hey, we're not going to do this, and then they do it, and not only do it, but do it in spades, right? We're not going to tax you, but then we give you the biggest tax bill since 1993, right?
Yes,
even their television tax thing went up, and I still don't even get that one. That television licensing tax they have, which is asinine.
Oh yeah, we have the same over here actually. Absolutely ridiculous. It annoys me actually over here as well. We have the same thing in Ireland. But the sad thing about it is he does not seem to have a plan. I think people are realizing this right now. He just seems to be constantly reacting to events. He doesn't seem to be that leader that they need.
Right.
Now, will the Conservatives and UKIP and the rest of them produce that leader they need? Maybe. Well, they need a change of course.
Your boy Nigel Farage, your dog, right? He's the one that's going to win that fight.
And look, as I've said, just give him a chance. See how he gets on.
Yeah.
Will Nigel be PM? Probably he could be. If he plays his cards right and they keep their powder dry, as we would say, they have a good chance.
Well, I think they have to Keir Starmer needs to continue to screw it up, or at least be not trusted for that to happen, right?
In fairness, he's doing a pretty good job of that at the moment. But I think Nigel, or somebody like him, I think what they need is a good, steady leader to come up with a proper plan to move their country forward.
Well, how about one they can trust? How about that? We'll start with one they can trust. Right?
Well, in fairness, that's what they did at the start of here. They trusted this guy. They gave him no majority and so on. He said all the right things, but as you know, when he got into power, he kind of backpedaled, well, more than backpedaled, on every single promise he made. But what they need in the UK is a decent leader to give them a proper direction.
They need a guy not to drop the ball on the pitch. That's what they need.
Yes.
Right.
And they need a plan. They need a good plan. Because at the moment, Britain is running at a deficit. There's no matter all the facts and figures out there, everyone knows. The Bank of England publish a report every quarter. Everyone knows what's going on. What they need is more internal investment into their own country. They need to strengthen up their trade deals, not just with the United States, but say with other partners. Right. They need a leader that can go out among the world powers and start hammering out good trade deals for Britain. They need a good proper plan, not just stumbling forward and hoping for the best, because this is not working for them.
100%. All right, here we go.
Now, we can debate the rights and wrongs of that, but what's not up for debate is that beneath this boring exterior, Starmer is clearly a guy who likes a scrap. He's also helped by the fact that Labour really doesn't have many options for getting rid of him. Unlike the Conservatives, the party doesn't have an enforceable mechanism to remove a sitting leader, while the Tory MPs can trigger a vote of no confidence with just 15% of the parliamentary parties signing on and a simple majority needed to remove the leader. Labour's equivalent of this is purely for show. They have at times used it. Back in 2016, shortly after Corbyn became leader, there was a lot of concern surrounding just how controversial he was and the potential damage he could do to the party in a general election, so they called a vote. And he lost. Big time. 172 voting against him, with only 40 pledging their support. Corbyn completely ignored the vote altogether, and that was that. In short, Labour's position today is a little like that of the US Democrats after Biden's disastrous election debate in 2024. Lumbered with an unpopular leader, but lacking any mechanism to remove him unless that leader himself decides to step down. And that means the immediate threat to Starmer may have passed. Analysts have described the PM's position as being temporarily stabilized. But we have to emphasize that the word temporary is doing an awful lot of the heavy lifting there. While MPs might not have a legal mechanism to force him out, pressure can still mount from the outside. There's a by-election later this month on February the 26th in Gorton and Denton in what has historically been a safe Labour seat. But the race is heating up and Labour is very much under pressure from both Reform on the right and Greens on the left. Then come the local council elections in May, and if those results come in as badly as the polling suggests, there will be so much pressure on the PM to step down that it would be hard to imagine him staying on. But even
I think he would stay on regardless. He would stay on regardless. There isn't any kind of outside pressure that's going to force it except for a called election, right? Like he has
well,
no
what's
reason
going
to step
on?
down.
But what he is saying there, the council elections are the grassroots elections. And what's going to happen there is Labour is going to get absolutely decimated, without a shadow of a doubt. They're going to absolutely get slaughtered in the council elections. And that cuts off Labour at its knees, is the best word to describe it. Now, the Labour Party, I do not see them sitting there after those elections results come out and sit there with a straight face and back this PM. I don't think they will. Now, who are they going to put in there to replace him? It will be interesting because there doesn't seem to be any great choices among the Labour Party to put in as PM.
Right. Well,
But
they'll have to
I
sort
think
it out themselves, I suppose.
I think it might trigger a snap election. It could trigger an election. It could.
Like the nice lady in Japan. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, it might. It might.
Here we go.
if that pressure does force him out, the question of who replaces him doesn't have any great answer. Angela Rayner was leading last year with party members and would beat Starmer in a head-to-head. She resigned over an unpaid stamp duty dispute last September and may still have an unresolved tax inquiry hanging over her. There are other choices, of course, from Wes Streeting to Andy Burnham, but the issue for the party is that much of what's plaguing it in the polls, at least until recently, are not issues that are simply resolved by replacing Starmer. The underlying issues pertain more to Britain as a whole and don't go away just because someone new is at the dispatch box. The Conservatives can tell you this better than anyone. Between 2022 and 2024, the Tories cycled through 3 prime ministers in 2 years without doing anything to arrest their terminal decline. Whether the greater risk is changing course or staying it is a question that the Labour Party is going to have to answer for itself, but they should take heed that the just replace the guy at the top approach so enthusiastically embraced by the Conservatives was part of what handed Labour their current majority in the first place.
Yep.
Yeah.
Facts. Exactly.
And that's that is the sad thing is there's no one good in the Labour Party to replace him as PM. All there is there, as he showed, was a bunch of empty shirts. And that's what their problem is.
Well, best of luck to them, right? I hope they get something better over there. Anything else for the people there, Patrick? Or are we good?
No, that's it. I said my 2 cents.
Gave him a couple of bob. All right, for Patrick McCallum, I am Alex Johansson. Like the like, ring the bell, subscribe, and help us beat the algorithm. For the A&P gents, and we are